Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Nice way to end a hot summer day. Let's talk some football. Training camp is popping, and it's taken me a little while to get here, Andy, but we get to put a bow on the NFC South today. I don't know if I want to call it the worst division in football, but I think this is probably whoever wins this potentially gets into the playoff picture with the least amount of wins. Is that crazy?
Yeah, I don't know. And we are starting out with the Saints since we're leaving Tampa for the last. And the more I went over the Saints this week, the more I thought that they probably have a pretty high ceiling. And yes, we are wearing the Saints color rush jerseys today, all black.
My shirt's actually navy, but you can't tell.
I guess I can kind of see with the light coming in off the window, but this is black like the night. And yeah, the Saints legit probably have a pretty high ceiling. Both of these teams today have a high ceiling if things go right. But they both probably have a narrow distribution of actual results that kind of tickles around the 10-11 wins.
Okay.
And
I'm fine with that.
But I think if one of these teams won 14 games, wouldn't be surprised. But it worked out. They didn't lose a bunch of games to injury this year. The quarterback play was what we'd hope to see, and there's a lot of stars today. There's a lot of stars on both sides of the ball for both of these teams today. And man, we delve into this a little, even though we do this as a season preview for 2022. And we obviously do have to talk about 2021 each time to kind of set the table, if you will. But we talk a lot about the future of the franchise because we like to play armchair GM. Both of these teams kind of need one because you can be creative with the cap and push stuff back, but you cannot do it forever.
Yeah.
The Saints are in a weird spot with that too. And now with a kind of a reset of the coaching, it's going to be a unique year. So you want to start on 2021 for us?
Sure. The New Orleans Saints had an up and down season. They looked out of the gate like a team that was surely going to contend for a playoff spot. Actually, you know what? Let me start even a step further back. There was wild chaos in New Orleans. Leading up to last year's season. Not only did their forever quarterback Drew Brees retire, but the city of New Orleans itself was broadly impacted negatively by a hurricane to the tune of Saints had to move their camp out of town and had to play some of their early games not in the Superdome. And it was a pretty massive disruption, yet they came out of the gate unbelievably strong. They absolutely thunderfucked the Packers. And then surprising loss to the Panthers, followed by a true beatdown of the Patriots. So it was like, oh, okay, who are these guys? What's happening? Are they contenders, or is there something throughout that week one? And then they lose to the Giants, and I think at that point you could basically say, okay, this is a team that's going to have high highs and low lows, and but ultimately, it was full of stars and led by a quarterback in Jameis Winston, who was given a new lease on life and made the most of it, at least until he tore his ACL. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, Hurricane Ida messed with things. They did have one preseason game, oddly, against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because I believe that's the team that hosted them as a surrogate stadium host in week one against the Packers, which they, again, that was one of the two where I think everybody had an opinion on that game. And I'm guessing it was very one-sided. Certain people were right and certain people were very wrong on that one. And then the next two games were road games. They were able to get back into the Superdome by week 4, where they lost to the Giants early bye, but they were still sitting at 6-2 heading into the Atlanta game that they lost at home. And then was it the Tampa Bay game, that final one before the Atlanta loss? I think that's where we had the injury.
Sounds
Or
right
was
to
it
me.
practice? I'm trying to think of actually when he tore his knee. I feel like I really just checked out on the Saints last year.
I
So
absolutely did.
annoying. But yeah, after that, I think it was that week 8. It was a week 8 injury, if I
It was November 1st.
All right, so I feel it wasn't a game. Like I feel it was a practice thing.
November
feel like you
1st
should know this.
was
Like,
well we it was the
outside
Tampa
of like where is
it happened in the Tampa Bay game, but it wasn't obvious. Like, I don't think he came out of that game. I'm going to open it up and tell you one way or the other. They beat Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And Trevor Siemian took the last 29 pass attempts. So Winston came out of that Tampa Bay game with the ACL. Trevor Siemian carried the Saints to a win.
And then they lost 5 in a row. And then, yes.
Turns out Trevor Siemian was not good.
Yeah, they started a kind of a mishmash of Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, a little Ian Book even, which wasn't great. But yeah, they were able down the stretch. They got wins against the Jets, Panthers, and Falcons, and Bucks down the stretch. Weird. That was a game that I'd love to I'd like to watch over and over again.
What?
9-0 win over Tampa Bay late in the season in Tampa, I believe we're looking at.
What the hell happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I joked with somebody about that today. We often reference that Bills Jaguars game where it's like, hey, sometimes weird stuff happens where the Bucks were like a top 3 offense and the Saints defense, despite all the players, they weren't actually playing that good. The Saints really didn't have an offense to speak of, and yeah, we had a goofy win for them there, 9-0 at Raymond James Stadium, and then they go out at home and lose 20-3 to the Dolphins.
What the hell?
Bit of a, and anywhere you look to, you'll see this, like a bit of a lost season as far as I don't know what like. I think you see like a team that loses its starting quarterback and you just kind of write off everything else that happens. But they lost a lot of games as far as like, however, I forget how you phrase this, like adjusted games lost to injury or what have you.
Sure.
Because essentially your number one wide receiver was supposed to play. Just kept getting, it was one of those where it just like, it was like the spaghetti incident. Or no, Chinese Democracy. I'm trying to think of the right album. Where it's just like, hey, it's going to happen someday. Just never happened. Ended up having to have another surgery. Jameis obviously missed half the season. A bunch of injuries on the offensive line. You kind of, again, your brain gets washed to that because you think, well, they lost their starting quarterback. The season was lost anyway. But they lost a lot of pieces throughout the season. And if you start looking at the roster, it's like, shit, this was a really talented team. They had a lot of star players, and they didn't even have their number one wide receiver. They missed Kamara for chunks of the season. He's, again, it's hard to peg him as like a true running back, even though he is, because he's so important in the screen and passing game. Like he's a very, very obviously important piece of that offense as well. So it was a kind of a what might have been season. And yeah, it looked good. It started out, what was Winston threw for 5 touchdowns in that first game. Through the 7 games he essentially played, he only really he threw 3 picks for 7 games because that was the biggest dog on him. It was like, all right, he had his 30 years. Is this going to be what we have? Like, is he going to come in? And like, it was kind of hashing right. And then, yeah, bunch of injuries. Defense can only do so much when you're starting Ian Book at quarterback, and season actually ended up being in a spot where they needed help, but in the final weeks there, they still had a shot at the playoffs.
They did.
They did. I think the Eagles had some sort of tiebreaker. Or
Eagles beat them 40-29. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was a tiebreaker at the end of the year because they needed to win their final game, but then also something else had to happen, I think, for them to
They needed to land in a 3-way tie.
Yeah, something goofy. There was a tiebreaker scenario where they needed to beat Atlanta, which they did, but something else had happened. So didn't make the playoffs, winning record despite everything. And yeah, they'll spin into 2022 after restructuring basically everybody who had a contract with the team, moving everything back one more year. And I think as Football Outsiders pointed out, it's not unique for a team to be in this spot, but it is unique for this team to be in a spot like this with the cap situation where a big chunk of it isn't dedicated to some long-term contract for a quarterback like you'll see in Kansas City soon. It is kind of a goofy cap situation that, again, it's not something that can go on forever.
Yeah, I think the best way to look at that roster and the way that they're paying their compensating players, they effectively got a super club-friendly deal for their QB, and they use that money then to compensate all of the good players who they've drafted and keep them on the roster. And this is even after losing Teron Armstead. There was Marcus Williams as well. Marcus Williams and Teron Armstead were meaningful contributors to this team for 4 years, and both are out the door. Yeah, and they're cap casualties. So there's been a little bit kind of clumsy management of the salary cap thing here. Are they still? Is Drew Brees even? Is he still on the? Are they still paying him? It wouldn't shock me.
I'd have to look at their cap stuff.
They played so many games with the cap at the very end of the Drew Brees era that you would have thought last year was the year they just take their medicine and and then move on this year. But they tried something last year. Got 2 wins against Tampa Bay out of it, which is a weird bugaboo. They continue to have Tampa Bay's number. But you're right. When a lot of your games lost come from the QB1, then your season is very, very tough to evaluate. And the fact that they were even in the mix was crazy. And I can see why a guy like Sean Payton had to step away from the game for a year after such a frustrating type of a season. It makes sense to me. And I don't really think, the timing, he probably was a year late for that. And realistically, Drew Brees was a year late retiring. Sean and Drew probably should have stepped away at the same time several seasons ago and it
felt weird that
let them rebuild for real. Instead, they got Jameis Winston and looked to have picked a reclamation project off of the scrap heap and have done well by that. Winston's was behind Taysom Hill for a full season. Is that right?
Yeah, it was never really clear.
What happened? Yeah,
because also I just went back and pulled up this fucking Tampa Bay game. This Tampa Bay game where I'm sure Tampa Bay was double-digit favorite at home.
Oh, I had at least 8-point favorites. Yeah.
It was we had Taysom Hill starting. Taysom Hill threw for 154 yards that day.
11.5.
But Tampa Bay was the teams combined to be 9 for 35 on third downs, 0 for 1 on fourth down, and punted 17 times.
Was it like freezing cold and 50-mile-an-hour wind? Oh wait, no, it was 75 degrees with no wind.
It was a nice day in Tampa. I need to rewatch this game.
Weird.
Yeah, the Saints actually punted more than Tampa. The Saints went 0-2, and Tampa never made it to the red zone, which is wild. They had
the best offense.
17 first downs. Never made it into the red zone. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to watch this game now. This one escaped me when I was going through things, but yeah, Armstead missing a bunch of time and gone. Andrews Pete was not great, and they still are in a better spot than a lot of teams are on offensive line.
Oh, sure.
There's a lot of teams that would be envious of this. So, and then, if the defense comes back is like we think it can, there were some interesting articles I read about the safety play that I actually think, the additions of Honey Badger and May, bringing in what they're going to in this defensive secondary this year might even be better than what they've had. So
holy shit.
Defense probably good. I don't even think we need to really talk about the defense. The defense will be good. The only worry I ever saw from anybody was saying like, hey, your defensive coordinator doesn't have time to concentrate on the defense now. Like that's what he's been doing for the last number of years. Just really dialing it in. Obviously, they did a really good job of draft evaluation, bringing in the right guys, just draft in free agency, getting the right personnel in this defense to become a top 10, probably top 5 defense. And the worry would be that now that he's a head coach and he still wants to call the defense, maybe that takes a slight step back, but even a step back leaves us as a top 10 defense. So the real thing you need to look at is Jameis popped back off injury and he already sprained his foot in practice. So we've got a guy coming off a knee injury with a banged up foot now that has to step into this offense. And I think that kind of decides, is this an 8 or 9 win team again, or is it a team that pushes for the division title?
Yeah. Okay. A couple things couple close the books here. Weird that they lost so many home games last year. Typically the Superdome is a clear home field advantage type of environment. They played 7 games because they lost that first game where they were in Jacksonville, right? They played 7 games in the Superdome. The only teams they beat were Tampa Bay and Carolina. They lost to the Giants, the Falcons, Bills, Cowboys, and Dolphins all at home. So weird kind of, not to have any home field bump there. And then from a roster standpoint, I had their top 3 most valuable players last year all on the defensive side of the ball, and none of them were players they lost. You want to guess who they are?
Oh, Lattimore?
Lattimore, number 1. Yep.
God, Cam Jordan was pretty good.
Cam Jordan, number 2.
Okay. This might actually be tougher. Is it just the other edge? Is it Davenport?
Nope. Davenport's number 6 for me for them. Okay. He was good. He was good, not great.
I don't think it's a linebacker, but I don't know.
Davenport only gave them 9 starts, which is why I have him downgraded, I guess.
Okay. Shy Tuttle.
Shy Tuttle's number 5 for them for me. He was good.
Actually, their rush defense, like all 3 levels, was very good.
It was very good. And the guy that stirred the drink is the guy you haven't mentioned, Demario Davis. Demario Davis was awesome. Awesome middle linebacker for them. And he remains the anchor of that defense. And really what we just kind of talked about, if you have an elite player at all 3 levels, you got a good defense on your hands here. You got a defense that can hold Tom Brady and the Bucs to 0 points and no red zone trips at home. But yeah, no, in seriousness, Marcus Williams, I think they did a decent job of self-evaluation. Let me look at my Marcus Williams grades. He gave them 16 starts last year, but his grades for me have been very, very, very flat and barely better than average. So I was not kind of lost in the kind of pearl clutching about Marcus Williams out the door, really. A lot of people in the media were. I guess they just like how he looks on film. But he is never graded like especially good to me. So I don't think that's like a huge loss. Teron Armstead is a bona fide, all-pro, borderline all-pro left tackle. But he had availability issues the last handful of years. He's only been able to give them limited starts, and 8 last year was a big problem for them. They had to figure out other answers to tackle, and I think they cut bait with 2 pieces that you could, frankly. And now they have, what at least looks on paper like a really, 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 really good defense, frankly. David Onyemata for a full season is going to be sick. That whole front 4 is sick. And then, yeah, we already talked about the secondary a bit, but Adebo and CJ Gardner-Johnson, very, very solid complementary pieces to a true shutdown corner and Marshawn Lattimore. One of the reasons the Saints have been so effective at really just getting in the Bucs' heads is that for whatever reason, Marshawn Lattimore, matches up like exceptionally well with Mike Evans, making it tough for the Bucs to really do much of anything. Like Mike Evans's statistics against the Saints versus everyone else are like clearly, a bifurcation there. And they're relatively healthy. The addition of Michael Thomas is going to be potentially big, really. The draft, they went all in with their draft.
It's another one of those out of
picks.
sight, out of mind things where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
like this offense was kind of trucking along even without him. And not only Michael Thomas, but Olave is fast as piss. Like you have if he integrates well into the offense, you have a legit, just an outside speedster to open things up a little. And yeah, but I mean, just quick back to the defense. I had to go try to find where I read this too, and I think it was over in Football Outsiders. But they said, what we had last year at the two safeties was like a true free safety, like a deep coverage free safety. And then Jenkins was a guy who had his nose up in the box. Which,
sure.
Please don't clip that. Whereas, Honey Badger, Marcus May are both guys that can kind of do both things. And I think even if you have a couple of safeties who maybe aren't as good, but they're more versatile, that's probably, enticing for a defensive-minded head coach. Where disguising coverages, disguising what you're going to do, having a couple safeties up in a box and, dropping one or both of them out, moving things around. Like it's the same as on offense. Like disguising what you're going to do more easily is, that's how you win games. That's how you win plays that win games. And it's it's kind of like those stupid, plays where they split a quarterback out wide. And it's like, they could throw it to him, but that's not actually a wide receiver. That's, that's Ryan Tannehill split out wide. Like that's not real. The same thing kind of goes for a free safety that just is never up in the box. Like, hey, he's up in the box. Yeah, he's dropping because that's not what he does. Like if you can't actually, if you're trying to disguise stuff and they know better, it's not as good. So hopefully it's something, because I do believe somebody said, Honey Badger ain't what he used to be. That's true. Like it is true. But, his versatility maybe brings something to the table. And like you said, just star players at all three levels, a smart defensive-minded head coach. I'm just not worried about this defense.
No,
I'm
not at all.
much more worried about just offense, pick up where it left off, and then shoot up a couple levels with the essentially adding two high-end wide receivers, hopefully.
Are you going to start this defense in the top 5 in the NFL in terms of power rating? Or are they
right
like
there,
6 to 10 range for you?
I'd have to look. I think I have them like 6th.
I think I'm right.
Like it's not like 10 feels disrespectful, but 5 feels like, I don't know if they're top 5 quite yet. That's the ceiling. The ceiling's, top 3.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. What about the offense? What are they? Like pretty clearly, like Pete Carmichael is a guy that I believe has been on the Saints. Now I didn't look this up, so don't fact check me, but I think he's been there for 55 years.
He came over.
He was born on staff
from the Chargers, with Drew Brees.
Pete Carmichael has been there for eons in NFL time.
We talked about him last year because we joked, we're like, I don't know if I know who this guy is.
I could not have picked him out of the lineup last year. I know who he looks like now. And he takes over for Sean Payton, who it was presumed really had his fingerprints very much on the offense. And so now it's the Pete Carmichael show. And we get to figure out, does he have his own vision for how he wants to run this offense, or is he going to do a Sean Payton impression? Where do you fall on this?
So I was only half joking. I remembered us talking about this, so I had to talk about it. He legitimately did come over with Drew Brees.
Wow.
The year that Brees came from the Chargers in 2006, that's the year that he went from the assistant wide receivers and quality control coach of the Chargers to the quarterbacks coach of the Saints. So I don't know if he jived well with Brees, and that was I'm gonna have to go look that up. That's a fun little piece of trivia. If Brees like vouched for the guy, like, hey, there's a coach you should bring over, I'd like him to work with me. I mean, a wide receiver coach, I'm sure, is working plenty with the quarterback as well. So I'm sure they knew each other well. But yeah, he has been there since 2006. And again, it's one of those things where we talk about this with some of these coaches that are, like Mike Zimmer for years. Like, hey, who's the defensive coordinator in Minnesota? Fuck, I don't know. Like, nobody talks about him. It's not a thing. I'm sure he helps game plan, but people talk about Mike Zimmer. And the same thing for years and years and years with, a head coach who has a big hand in the offense, and you just never have an idea because you're not in on those meetings. You're not privy to that information. Like, how much of a handprint did we might find out? Like Pete Carmichael, these last few years was like 80% of the offense. Like he was designing most of it. Yeah, he may have been the architect. Like I'm not sure anyone outside of it. Maybe I haven't read anything that's led me on to believe that he was, doing much more than Sean Payton. But I mean, Payton was a guy who knew he was kind of coming to the end of his tenure, and we're going to talk about that with another team here too, where they, took a defensive coordinator and put him in charge over the course of the offseason. Like when you're going to step down and you have an heir apparent, maybe sometimes you do start to ramp up the responsibilities. So if that's that's the bull case for the Saints offense, like, hey, this was a process and he slowly gave Carmichael more responsibility and it's going to be just fine. But there's always the control freak where Carmichael was in the meetings and he was just offensive coordinator title only, and this could be a goddamn disaster. I don't know. We're gonna find out quickly, but man, you have skill position players on skill position players here. You have essentially a top 5 running back, probably a top 10 receiver. It's tough to say coming off a full year of injuries, and you have a super high end rookie receiver. Your offensive line has some holes, but you had a quarterback who really, really took a step forward. I know it was only 7 games, but Jameis was great. If you took that Jameis season and threw out those 30 interceptions, which, hey, yeah, if you took the Titanic and threw out the iceberg incident, it's one of those things. But
hell of a ship,
yeah, hell of a ship, made it across. But that's everything he did outside of just those big mistakes. Jameis was solid. And that's kind of what we saw last year. Like he was playing well, especially coming into a newer spot like that. If that's the kind of Jameis you get and everything works out, I mean, what's your ceiling for this offense?
Elite.
It's top 10.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I'd say so. I mean, we'll get to Jameis in a second, and that's really what I think decides it more so even than the offensive identity. They have enough pieces to work with on the offense, though, and the strong enough offensive line that if this doesn't work, I think I'll be surprised. Right? Like, I think I would find it genuinely surprising if these guys are struggling to score into the 20s on a weekly basis with a healthy quarterback. I mean, like, frankly, there's not really like an obvious hole other than your RB2. Like if Alvin Kamara goes down with injury or suspension, then all of a sudden that's probably a good thing because now you're running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets and you're getting your tight ends involved. I mean, this has the potential to be a really, really good passing offense because all the pieces feel very complementary. And I guess in the back of my mind, I'm leaning towards it will work and they'll be good because the Saints kind of are telling us that with their decision making, right? Like they gave away more assets to go get Olave. Like you don't do that if you internally have questions about how talented your roster is. Yeah. And these guys, they're good at evaluating talent. They're not necessarily the greatest at keeping them on the field and healthy, but they're certainly good at picking guys in the draft to make immediate impacts as young players. And to the degree that that's maybe what you can take away from Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen over the last handful of years, like they have developed these young players up into immediate impact players, and expecting that to all of a sudden go away because they have more roles and responsibilities, I think is foolish. And so Chris Olave and Trevor Penning and even some of, even Alontae Taylor as the DB, and I think you can count on these guys being impacts this year. And, even if not the beginning of the year, by the end of the year. So offense, I think, is going to be quite good, really. And I think my floor for them is about 20. My median is about 12. And my ceiling is top 6. Again.
my favorite part of the new regime so far is
What's that?
Dennis Allen put a stop to the fucking Taysom Hill quarterback experiment.
Oh yeah,
He's a tight end now. Said and I'm ingest a little, but also like if I'm Jameis, that makes me feel a little better because that whole thing was just
your team.
It was just a weird deal. Like, hey Jameis, we're giving you the keys. This is your team. We're putting you in charge here. So
if you see them trot him out in some gadget plays, are you going to lose your shit, or
not really?
You like
and
a couple
the thing
of
is too,
like
like I like Taysom Hill. Like he is imposing with the ball in his hands in space. He lays a shoulder down. He's not afraid to take a hit in the middle of the field. Like, I'd love to see him playing a bunch of tight end and getting involved in the offense. I think he can be an asset to this offense. I just don't like, I don't like the, hey, guess what? He's going to play this drive as a quarterback. Let's just not do this. Like, why are we doing this? And then the Penning thing, a little cold water there. That guy's a fucking psycho. He got kicked out of practice for getting in fights with his teammates.
Some of the clips were good. Yeah.
That's like, all right, this guy's like a hothead, but he's a veteran. No, this dude's a rookie. Like, stop doing that. Nobody likes you now. And then also, I just kind of worry how that translates. I think he led either the country or at least the conference in penalties. Like he probably needs to take a step. He's like that. I think that, it's funny we have the corner because Lattimore, wasn't that the name of the guy who's really angry on the program?
The program, Lattimore, yeah. I
think he broke the window with his head.
Yeah, well, he was juicing. That's how you knew.
Well, yeah, he was. I'm not accusing Trevor Penning of juicing. So, but, yeah, then Femi has it right. Like, he just needs the shit kicked out of him. Like, they need to go full private pile on him and beat him with bars of soap or something. Just like put him in his place.
Well, they have a lot of veteran leaders. I'm sure everything will be.
That's the thing. The veterans need to tell this kid to calm down. And then, Andy, we haven't even mentioned Andy Dalton. That's a solid backup quarterback.
It's better than Ian Book. Yeah. Yeah. Better than Trevor Siemian and better than Ian Book. Yeah.
Ian Book doesn't have an NFL arm.
No. Okay. So, I mean, injury is really the only thing that spooks me about this offense reaching their potential, which to me is a lot higher than the market is rating them. The market right now is rating them as like 20th-ish offense in terms of point production, 21st offense in terms of point production. That is down there with the likes of Washington, New England, Miami. What's another one? Jacksonville. I think this offense could be better. And maybe I'm watching and reading too many reports of Michael Thomas catching 4 balls for 4 touchdowns and red zone drills and stuff like that. But
I watched a little bit of clips though. He looks like he's fine. If that's how he's going to play,
he looks fine. He looks fine.
If you're coming back as a quarterback,
a
quarterback with a over 60% lifetime completion rate, who has a 5,000-yard season under his belt, I don't see why the projections are so low for this offense.
Yeah, Marquez Callaway was the highest graded wide receiver I had for this team last year, and he was barely above replacement. The number 2, Deontay Harris, was replacement level. The number 3, Traquan Smith, well below replacement level. So this is a big old upgrade potentially in the wideouts. And a full, again, like, let's talk about Jameis Winston then, because I think that does that's where this offense goes between 6 and 20, really. And what's crazy is we said it was week 8, right? When he got hurt. When he went down, the efficiency stats for him were elite through that portion of the season. He was having like he was having one of those campaigns where it was like, the eye test doesn't say he should be in the MVP discussion, but should he be in the MVP discussion? Because his EPA per play, his completion percentage, all that was he looked like he had body swapped with Mahomes in terms of statistical profile, and it didn't.
If you take that and extrapolate what he was doing out, it would have been like a 34 touchdown, 7 interception season.
Yeah.
Which
who's that?
You don't need to like, for this to be a top 10 offense, he doesn't need to have a 50 touchdown season. Like, you're going to be able to run the ball. You're going to be able to do other things. Like, 4,500 yards, 30, 35 touchdowns. And yeah, the ceiling, you're touching that ceiling of like top 5.
Yeah. Let me pull it up I guess completion percentage wasn't as good as I'm remembering, but in terms of EPA per play, he was 3rd in the NFL when he went down, behind Stafford and Brady, which is pretty good. He outperformed the likes of Allen, Kyler Murray, Mahomes. Murray was very much in the MVP discussion. Significantly better than Rodgers' start to the season. So, yeah, this is kind of the question that has been gnawing on me all offseason in terms of really buying in on this Saints team being a contender and what is otherwise a weak NFC. How good is Winston? How good will he be this year? Did what we see last year, was that some sort of flash in the pan, small sample size, can't trust it? Or is this guy going to be able to generate, 0.25 points added per play this season?
Yeah. And then somebody did just ask about Kamara. I don't know. Like, I'm super bad at the legal takes. Like, I got somebody crabby about the live stuff because I don't know. Everything I read said that there was no way in hell they were going to do this temporary restraining order and let these guys just play. And somebody's like, a lot of people thought that they were going to let him play. I'm like, oh, not the guys I talked to, I guess. But I've talked a little bit to some people who know a little bit about the law. And there is a case that the Kamara stuff just gets pushed off into next season somehow, which is wild, that some of this stuff can be like, oh, we got a rule on this now. And then Kamara is, who knows? But, I mean, the worst case is that could be a 4 to 6 game suspension for what he did out there. I think it was Pro Bowl weekend. So like that's a bit of a problem for this offense. They lost all the games he didn't play in last year. I think he missed 4, and he's a big cog in this offensive wheel too. So that is a problem. But again, we don't know. It could be a nothing burger that goes away because the NFL. Obviously, the punishment, we won't get into that. The punishments handed out in the NFL are not meted out consistently all the time, so you just never can tell.
Yeah, and if there's a reasonable chance that the NFL is not going to step in and punish him, and then see the legal case get dropped and the civil case settled, and nothing ever comes of it. I don't think there's
somebody in the chat said, and this was the case for it to be pushed. The courts wouldn't be done till March. So the delay is like the NFL will wait for the courts to figure things out before they, put their own justice to the cat test there. So
I agree.
Who knows? Maybe Kamara and honestly, like at that point, they might just have to finally go into rebuild with this cap stuff. So go sit out next year, Kamara. And Winston, like you said, maybe EPA per play is probably a better metric than just overall like completion percentage and things of that nature. Like adding value to the points and win percentage are always going to be better than just looking at how many passes did he complete or how many yards did he throw for. Like those are things that can result in wins, but actually seeing it where EPA went up and win probability went up, that's more important to me. So being efficient and being not the guy who has big, because those 30 interceptions, I'm guessing a lot of those were negative EPA plays. And in fact, probably all of them.
Yeah.
So not throwing 30 is that's a goal for this year. Fuck it, the LASIK jokes, like those are jokes, but who knows? Maybe that was what it took.
You want to know what's kind of funny?
Fucking scenario.
Nothing really changed about his on target percentage versus in bad throw percentage and stuff. It was all about the same. It was literally a little bit of just decision making. Like his accuracy didn't really take a step forward. It was much more the style of pass, what they were asking of him. He has
thrown to the running back a lot more.
Yeah, it dropped big time. But again, that he kind of had to because they didn't have any wide receivers. So I mean, like realistically, like Michael Thomas might make Jameis Winston look very good and get him a nice big contract in this offseason. I actually don't know. Is Jameis a free agent after this year? Do you know? Is he a lame duck?
I think he was a 2-year deal. I have to look at that. I don't look at contract stuff as close as I should. So,
Okay.
schedule.
Sure. Let's take a look.
Again, it's an NFC team, meaning they have 9 home games. Oh, not so fast, my friends. One of those home games is played in London, so they do lose a home game, but it is against someone of probably equal. It's not. I mean, I guess at least it wasn't a home game against a shitheel. That he said, "Wow, we gotta travel to play a bad team." It was probably a coin flip, regardless.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
They're at
how
a
I feel
travel
about that.
disadvantage for that game, though, which is not great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not great. Having Atlanta and Carolina in your division is good. Having the late bye is bad. Having Cleveland late in the season may be bad. I don't know. We're going to find out pretty soon what the quarterback situation is there. But overall, an easy-ish schedule. There's some rough patches. Like you're going to play Tampa. Everybody, I mean, before they have the schedule, you're going to play Tampa twice.
So that's 2 wins.
Yeah, I mean they swept them last year, didn't they? So,
and the year before. The only loss I can remember was the playoff loss.
Yeah, and that's funny, Sam. It actually is kind of a good London game. Like both of these offenses can be pretty fun.
Very, very good.
But yeah, that stretch in a grin.
Is there any history or fanfare around the New Orleans and Minnesota matchup?
I mean, maybe not to the London crowd, but Christ, there's been a couple games over the last 15 years.
Couple memorable games?
Couple memorable games, my goodness. But yeah, the decent sized travel advantage, having LA having to travel over to the Caesars Superdome or whatever it's called now, after coming off a tough little travel spot.
Yeah.
They're at a big rest disadvantage to the Steelers. That's a sneaky bad spot for them against a team that, that's a win if it's at home and you're not having a weird travel disadvantage or rest disadvantage.
Yeah.
But that is the spot I'm looking at, because I'm worried about the Raiders being a good team this year, especially on offense. So Raiders, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, just because of the spot, and then Rams. Even though it's a good spot for you, it's still the Rams, and then Niners, Tampa on the road back to back. So traveling to San Francisco and then coming back and popping over to South Florida and then getting your late bye. It's not a great 5 or 6 game stretch. Like winning 3 of those games feels like a pretty big win.
It's not. They need to get off to a good start.
Yep.
Imperative. If this team struggles out of the gate, they can forget about a wild card. They can forget about the division. Really, they need to beat Atlanta and Tampa weeks 1 and weeks 2 if they have any hope. Really. And that Tampa game week 2 is going to be an interesting one because Tampa's coming off a primetime game. Tampa's banged up right now. You need to win that game. Hosting Tampa.
And that's where I'm at a bit of a pickle with this team. I think there's a really, really high probability this team is a top 10 offense, a top 10 defense, and it still wins like 9 games.
Yeah, there's
just so many coin flips against teams with either good matchups or good spots in the schedule, and they could lose 5 out of 6 of those games in the middle, and then it doesn't take a lot from there to get to 9 and 8. And again, it's like, hey, this team really, I think there's a decent chance at the end of the season we're looking at this team be like, again, what might have been like.
We're going to say
couldn't win their close games, and
we're going to say this about Tampa Bay too. Really, like the division in my mind could be won by 9 games this season, and it'll depend on if it goes 2-0 either way or if it's a 1-1 split between Tampa and New Orleans, I think. And this schedule, like a lot of the NFC schedules are easy. This one's, there's some sneaky tough stuff in this.
That's middle of the pack.
Yeah. What's your read on first 5 weeks of the season? How do they start?
Like that Tampa game is very, very pivotal.
Very pivotal.
You should be able to go to Atlanta and beat that.
If you win that, if you beat Tampa, you're 4-1 now, right? At minimum, maybe 5-0.
Minnesota on on a weird spot in London isn't a walkover for sure. That's a coin flip game, but
You match up decently against them, though.
they do. It's a secondary that you should be able to beat up, and it's a pass rush that to be able to take advantage of. Even if Minnesota's offensive lines improve, that's a bad matchup for Minnesota. So 4-1 out of the gate, and then like I said, all these coin flip games: Cincinnati, Las Vegas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. That Cleveland game? If Cleveland's good, you'll be a dog on the road there. I mean, it depends. If this team turns out to be really good, maybe it's a pick 'em, but that's another coin flip. Like Minnesota, Cincinnati, Las Vegas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Got to win 4 or 5 of those games to really make this a successful season. And Sam's calling it a tie in London. They'd love that. Fuck, you get 1 point for that for the draw on the table. So that wouldn't be too bad for either team. But
is it a tie regardless? Isn't that what they call a match? Isn't it a tie?
Rubber.
A rubber. Thank you.
Oh, they call them Johnnies.
John.
But yeah, there's a lot of coin flips on this, and we don't know enough about the coaching situation, how the quarterback thing hushes out, and just there's a lot of what ifs. But like you said, not only could 9 or 10 wins absolutely take this division, 9 or 10 wins is probably a wild card spot. I do think this team is in the playoffs. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's take a look at those odds.
Well, what are their odds? Yeah. Plus money for playoffs. Huh. Wow. South is still plus 350? Really? Yeah. We'll have to ask Dan if these are current odds. These seem like they might be a little stale. I feel like the South price got beat up. I've played the South mostly just to potentially come back on the Bucs later in the season, if at all. Super Bowl 40-1, NFC 17-1. Man, oh man, oh man. The path to getting a good enough seed in the playoffs to where either of those bets is live is too cute.
It is tough to like going to play in LA or Green Bay or Tampa or what if Philly's good? You don't want to go. This is a dome team having to go to like Green Bay or Philadelphia in January. I don't know. I feel like Jameis up on Lambeau in January. Have fun with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Jameis Winston also never has played a playoff game, if I remember correctly.
Dan, yeah, I was going to say I didn't want to speak for him, but Dan usually pulls these the day of.
Right? Yeah, I thought so too.
He said these are from FanDuel, and they are still pretty heavy on Tampa, which is, again, I mentioned this morning on Brown Bag. Any sort of futures, please shop around, because like that George Pickett number, I bet it at 50. And
Pickens?
Pickens, excuse me, not Pickett. Never bet Pickett.
Pickens is a bad price.
50-1 for rookie of the year this morning, and a lot of places said 20.
Wow.
So shop around. Yeah. Again, low limits, but I'm still more than happy to take another wide receiver to add him to my stable. So
my fair price for New Orleans to win the NFC South is, you want to guess?
210.
Oh wow, very close. I'm at 215. I thought you were going to go like in the 300 range. I'm at plus 250.
I know you like them. I like them too, and
yeah,
I think Tampa is getting a little too much love in the market.
Yeah, and I think realistically, like, I should probably just have sat on my hands and just bet the money line in week 2 against Tampa, especially if they're 3.5 point dogs at home.
I've seen somebody in the chat.
My number.
I think you bet that.
Yeah, my number might not be current on that, what that week 2 game is, because those numbers are starting to move a little. But ultimately my angle is just, I feel like the market's way too high on Tampa. And this was even before they started getting hurt. I thought that. I'm just not there that this is going to be a seamless transition year for the Bucs. And the only way I could really talk myself
DraftKings has a 4 on that. Tampa is still getting a ton of respect by the market.
Jesus Christ.
The market isn't going to take a couple of offensive linemen and just and just switch on a dime at casual shops. I don't think so. I think, yeah, if you want to bet some Saints +4, that's probably a pretty good bet. And that's my betting plan of attack. I don't like any of these futures, save maybe if you were able to find to make the playoffs at +125, +130. Again, not something I really want to get involved with season long. When I'm betting season long, it's a big edge on a regular season win total or a really big long shot in an awards market. Like if I'm going to win, I'm going to be sure that I have either a really big edge or there's a really big payout at the end of it. So I don't love betting these futures at like even money when there's probably better ways to take that same amount of money and just bet it a few times on the Saints throughout the season. Go like 4-1 against the spread on those games, and you get your money a lot faster that way.
Yeah, you know what price I got on the Saints? 5-1. I got +500 on the Saints. On the Saints to win the South.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was referring to that to make the playoffs.
Oh, +180.
Like I think that's a very safe bet. I really think that in a weekend, that should be -125.
I mean, frankly, there's enough games on their schedule early in the season that if you are correct, I'm not saying
that's what I'm saying. Just, betting them week to week.
Betting them week by week, you're going to make more money that way, I think. And I think this is a team that I will absolutely bet on week by week. I don't know why the market is so cold on them. I really don't. I don't think that's right. I think the market is way low on this offense. And I mean, if you ask me, what is going on here, how could the market be this off? And I'm saying that they are the 21st ranked offense as we speak. The market is assuming that Kamara is getting suspended for a bunch of the season, and the market is assuming that Michael Thomas is behind him. That he's not.
Olave doesn't translate to the NFL.
Season. I mean,
I talked to somebody who made a pretty good case for like Ohio State quarterbacks not translating, but part of the case was like, hey, they always have great wide receivers, and I mean, Olave was great. I really do think his skill set translates. So I think the offense is, if they finished anywhere near 20, it would be due to some suspensions and injuries. So go Saints with a Geaux.
Go Saints.
For you Cajuns.
Saints.
We have a connection, Minnesota and New Orleans. Like I'm not far from the river. If I'm touching that river, I'm basically touching you guys.
That's right.
Yeah. It's all connected.
The Mississippi River goes through both cities.
That's true. Yep. Anyway, let's finish up the NFC South. Yeah. Also, they got rid of that cheating motherfucker with the who has a second family in Dallas, by the way. Sean Payton.
Is that right?
Rot in hell.
Does he?
I don't know. That's like my bit. My bit is just ragging on Sean Payton.
You've said it so many times now. I thought maybe that was a story at one point. No,
I was surprised they didn't put that part in the Kevin James film.
Oh yeah, how did he get that left?
That's why I didn't say anything bad about Sean Payton, because having Kevin James play you in a movie, that's punishment enough. He served his time. He did the crime. He'll be probably coaching somewhere next year. But yeah, let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, the Buccaneers.
3, 2, 1. New podcast.
Welcome to the deep dive. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Andy.
Tampa Bay.
We are in a world where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are your prohibitive favorites to win the NFC. And I got to tell you something. It doesn't really feel right to me. Doesn't really feel right to me whatsoever. And there are a couple reasons why. And we can look back at all of the things that happened last year, this offseason, and then so far this preseason, and bring up some of the key questions that I think Tampa Bay really has to answer before I will put them in the rarefied air where they should be prohibitive favorites to win a conference in the National Football League. Now, the odds would tell you Tom Brady is due to make a Super Bowl. He makes a Super Bowl about every other year, and he didn't make one last year, so he is due to go back this year. But 2021 was a year that I thought Tampa Bay, frankly, underachieved. And some of it was because of, lackluster effort on any given day. And some of it was because of injuries towards the end of the season, really not their fault. But ultimately, I don't think Tampa would reflect on 2021 as a successful year, even though they went 13-4 and won a playoff game. And the reason I say that is because they brought the entire band back, every single contributing factor from their Super Bowl team, where they were clearly the best in the NFL. And they had an absolute cake schedule last year in a division that had no real threats. And the one team that does pick your pocket lost their quarterback in the game you played them. And you got to face a backup twice when you faced the Saints. And yet you still
lost to both.
You still lost to them both times. And yet you didn't, realize your potential in the playoffs. You got a phenomenal comeback even in your playoff loss against the Rams by Tom Brady and company. Couldn't close the door. And frankly, I expected more out of this team last year. I thought they were a solid bet preseason to win the Super Bowl. I thought Tom Brady was a solid bet to win MVP. And I thought the schedule afforded them an opportunity to really just distinguish themselves, and they never really did. They never clicked the same way they did down the home stretch in 2020. And I can't really I can kind of point to some reasons why. Obviously, they didn't have great injury luck, but their schedule was weird because they lost a couple of games they should have been competitive in. Most of the
hold
Saints
up. We
games.
got
Yeah, go ahead.
we're having tech issues here.
Oh, sure.
Something's wrong with you. We're YouTube. We're getting old messages coming through. Looks like we got a message coming in from 2014. Johnny C says, "Is there any chance this is the year Brady falls off?" We've said it for like a decade. I don't know. Maybe
we're gonna get there.
It has to happen. So we will get to Tom Brady, but doesn't it just feel like we've tried to make that a thing for like a damn decade? I just can't.
Well,
I can't
he did
fathom
fall
it
off
ever happened.
his last year. His last year in New England was awful. But he bounced.
He bounced back. Yeah, that I think the biggest surprising thing was just like, hey, I'm in Tampa now, and it just worked. Like you worked, and granted, yes. The year that they won the Super Bowl, that was a crazy talented team, both sides of the ball, great line, lots of good receivers. And it was surprising that last year they didn't just kind of keep it running, but injury luck sometimes will get you. And it was still a good team. It was still a team that made the playoffs.
Still a team that lost to the Washington football team.
Yeah.
And got shut out against
what I didn't realize that we didn't say? Matt Rule. Longest tenured head coach in the division. Not for long, but all three other teams have hired coaches since. Like Arthur Smith will soon be the longest tenured head coach in the division.
Wow.
It's a lot of turnover. A lot, and granted, it's funny too that two teams that were very good had turnover. One was just Drew Brees. I almost said Drew Brees. Peyton, it was just eventually time to retire. And Arians too. I mean, he had his second retirement. He had that health scare. And I did read some stuff on that with the whole Tom Brady maybe not coming back saga. There were two different reports saying that the reason he didn't step down was because he thought Tom Brady wasn't coming back, and he didn't want to saddle Bowles with, "Hey, it's your mess now. Enjoy this with whatever quarterback you find." Which I guess I can buy it. I buy it, and he stayed with the organization. I didn't understand. I get the Bowles thing. Like I think Bowles is fine. I think he's going to be doing a better job than his first stint. I'd probably say that with Dennis Allen too, but just because those first stints were with horrible teams, I don't think, that could have been in worse situations, honestly. But the Leftwich thing, I was surprised that he didn't get a job elsewhere. And then also just, I wonder if they'd kind of promise Bowles the job, assuming Leftwich was going to be the Jacksonville coach or something after last season anyway. So kind of a weird spot, but obviously I think Leftwich he'll be in the round of hirings again. He'll be getting some interviews.
Yeah, I don't think it was entirely that thought through. I think Bowles was probably the right decision in a lot of respects because this was a team still primed to win now, and I don't think you bring in a guy as a very first time head coach under those conditions. I think you bring in a guy who's at least been through the ringer once as a coach. As you mentioned, it wasn't.
He does have a little bit of
endeavor.
So he brings up the Leftwich windup. Yeah, that started at like his ankles. Yeah. But yeah, that's fair. Like Bowles, and again, anyone who remembers the Todd Bowles experience, like that was a horrid team. It just had it reminds me of the current roster they have up there, but it's hard to win with teams like that. It's hard to look good. He wasn't on the same page with management. He had some bad quarterbacks. Like this is a dream scenario for a coach to take over. Honestly, Dennis Allen too. Like, oh, we have a bunch of good players because normally when you have a new coach, it's like Jacksonville or something, and even they have a stud young quarterback hopefully. But a lot of times you take over a bad team because somebody got shit canned. Like, Todd Bowles is in a good spot. This is his spot to make a little bit of legacy, win a couple games, win some playoff games a couple years, and you're kind of set for life. Even if this gig doesn't work out in the long run, you're going to get another shot then. So I'm hopeful for him. I liked what he did with his side of the ball the last couple of years. Again, Bruce Arians is still in the building. Yeah. He's still essentially, you switch coaches, but for a team that switched coaches, you still have a massive amount of continuity.
Sure.
And basically, the big three are all still in the building.
Yeah, well, we can cover the coaching switch, but I don't know that you lost anything with Bruce Arians.
No, I think it's.
I don't think it was net. It was a net. It was a negligible loss. I want to reflect a little more on 2021, though. This team could not. This team was a bad bet on, frankly. They barely won a bunch of games that they could have, should have, would have lost, including week 1 against Dallas, including week 4 against the Patriots. You remember that game? Yeah. Patriots game? They won 19-17. They were playing with fire. They let Philly back in the game week 6, ended up kneeling on the goal line there, not covering. The covers they had in the first half of the season were against Chicago, Miami, and Atlanta. Otherwise, I think they were 3-7 against the spread to start out, and then they started putting together some winning football. Beat the hell out of the Giants, covered against the Colts, although another game that I think if you rewatch that was a very close call. They probably should have lost. Buffalo, they got the win and the cover, another game that they absolutely had no business covering. That was a 3.5 point spread, and they scored a touchdown in overtime. Still very, very, very upset about that. And then
overtime touchdowns are
touchdowns the worst.
Either I've never felt good about winning a game on one, where it's like I don't know if I deserve that, but losing on that hurts so bad.
You know what's funny? I think because of the overtime rules, and this is a total sidebar. Did you know that 6 was the second most common margin of victory last season? It beat 7. 3 was still first by a mile.
Oh yeah, 3.
6 was the second most common margin of victory in 2021. And that's I think there's a valuable lesson there in teasing, but we'll leave that for another day. The Bucs finally put together a little bit of momentum late. They covered convincingly against Philadelphia in the playoff round 1, but then they lost by 3 at the end as time expired. However, that was a one-sided game. That was Rams all the way, and that was 2 times the Rams basically fed you your lunch in 2021. And I guess
that was one of those 2 where it's like, how are the Rams going to lose it? Like I had the the creeping dread that whole game. Like I just really thought the Rams were going to lose that game.
They acted like they wanted to.
Yeah, they looked like they were going to try to at times.
Yeah, but yeah, the major takeaway though was you don't match up great against the Rams. And you guess what, Andy? You know who brought it back this year? The Rams. So what exactly is going to change from last year to this year?
You know who's on Tampa's schedule in the middle of the season?
Is it the Rams?
The Rams.
Yeah, you played them and lost twice to them last year. You can't figure out the Saints. You can't figure out the Rams. How in the hell are you winning the NFC? How is this happening? Like it literally your path. You have to go through Aaron Rodgers and maybe a couple of first-time quarterbacks in the playoffs. Like that's maybe your only path to getting to a Super Bowl, which is not something that I want to install you as the conference favorite if that's your, the reality we live in. And I don't think it was fluky that they lost to the Rams twice. This defense matches up poorly against the Rams because of Todd Bowles' identity. Todd Bowles has one speed on his fastball, the way he runs his defense. They are aggressive. He leaves his cornerbacks on an island. And if your cornerbacks can't match up with their skill position players and their quarterback has intestinal fortitude to stand in the pocket and wait for his guy to come uncovered, even when the pressure is coming on, then you're going to get carved. And that's what happened both times they played the Rams. Stafford carved these guys. And anyone that has Tampa on their schedule this year and now knows that Todd Bowles' system remains intact and is going to come at them the same way should be prepared for that this year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there are more instances of teams like really giving it to these guys. And there's a lot of good quarterbacks and a lot of good offenses on this schedule, man. A lot. So it's going to be challenging, I think, for the Buccaneers to find as much success. And I think we saw a lot of signal in 2021 that there are some cracks in this foundation.
There's really no in between. Like, they are not playing the middle class of quarterbacks at all. Like, again, we'll get to the schedule eventually, but it goes Dak, and I'm putting Jameis up there. I don't give a fuck. They're Dak, Jameis, Rodgers, and then KC right in a row. And then you get to play Atlanta and Pittsburgh and Carolina. But then you have Lamar, then the Rams, and then again Seattle and the bye, which are about the same. And then Cleveland, we don't know. Not sure on Cleveland yet. But then you play Jameis again. You play our guy Trey Lance after he's had 13 weeks to get his feet under him. And then you play Joe Burrow. And then maybe Kyler is your true middle ground. At that point, who knows if Kyler's even playing if he hasn't done his homework? Because then you go Arizona, Carolina, Atlanta to end the season. So it's a very roller coastery season as far as the quarterbacks you're playing. But the highs are high and the lows are low. Yeah. And yeah, if teams have figured out, you always talk about Kansas City, like teams have figured out the blueprint. If teams have figured out the blueprint, I mean, you can figure out the blueprint to beat a good defense. And if that's something that's going to come to fruition, like, hey, not only just good quarterbacks, but good coaches. Like Green Bay, LaFleur and Rodgers, Kansas City, Andy and Pat. Like you have some scary matchups. Harbaugh and Lamar. Like if they're smart and they see how this works, like those good teams, yeah, you're favored against those teams, but yeah, those are closer to coin flips if your defense is a bit neutered at that point. So I don't know. We'll get to that. I kind of wanted to start at the top. We put Teflon Tom on here. Like, you want to explain where we were at with him, like 4 days ago when he was not showing up to practice? That was fun for an hour.
The Tom Brady, we could spend way too much time on this, but there's a couple of things that I want to kind of dive into. We do, I think, a decent job of kind of calling a spade and talking turkey on this podcast. We're not beholden to special interests or favoritism or access journalism in any way. And I will caveat all of this conversation with Brady has made me more money in my life than any other quarterback, and it's not close. I will forever remember his time in New England as some of my all-time favorite moments betting on the Patriots in those Super Bowls were just formative. He should have been the MVP last year, frankly. I thought he was more valuable to his team than Rodgers was. But how in the fuck is he doing this at age 40, whatever? Where, no scrutiny at all? No one asking tough questions about how this is possible? no one, like everyone kind of winks and nods and kind of makes snide jokes about the personal, health guru and whatever has gotten him to this point. But like, I mean, there's something else going on, frankly. And, I'm surprised that no one has been able to get anything to stick other than stupid
Balco.
Deflategate.
Femi says Balco. Remember Balco? Yeah, it was weird when Remember when Balco was really
Bay
good?
Area, Bay Area Lab Company?
Yeah, and the Raiders had an average age of like 38 on the roster and went to the Super Bowl anyway. It was crazy how that coincided, but no.
Like
but
even
everyone
Peyton Manning.
wants to
Peyton
dog
Manning
on
got
Rodgers.
scrutiny for HGH at the end of his career. I mean, I guess they kind of gave him. His wife needed it for whatever. But like, I am not saying that I'm not enjoying.
No, he's cheating.
Him.
Like I don't give a shit. Like I love. I still celebrate the Lance Armstrong wins for America. I love cheating.
Okay.
Like if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And he's just better at it. Like he's 1,000,000 years old and he's playing better than a lot of these young players. Really, his only real bad injury was just like it doesn't matter how much HGH you take. If somebody hits your leg like that, it's gonna fucking come apart.
Yeah, right.
And like such is life. But really, like I don't know, blood magic. Everyone gives Rodgers shit for dating a witch. Brady's doing something like some sort of weird devil deal, but I mean, whatever he's putting in his body is not only better than what other people are doing, it's better than whatever they're testing for. And congrats to him. I don't give a shit. It's crazy that he's 45 and he still looks like this. He's gorgeous. His skin looks so soft still. He just looks great. He's like Paul Rudd if he played football. It's wild, but it might be a little tougher this year because, he had great systems and great coaching and great players around him in New Orleans. Now you've accepted me. New England for all those years. And I mean, the last couple of years, it's been a good offensive line with, I don't even think good is an understatement. Great, elite wide receiver and tight end talent around him. And it's going to probably take a little bit of a step back this year. And that's, we joked about the guy, is this the year that he takes a step back? As likely as it's ever been, if there's going to be offensive line injuries,
yes,
and the wide receiver room is going to start to show a few cracks. So Antonio Brown didn't play in that playoff game. I'm trying to figure out if he got injured.
No, he took his shirt off in the Jets game. Yeah.
I remember it was like the 2 weeks before the end of the season. He just went crazy.
The game that they could not cover a 13.5 point spread against Zach Wilson and company. That was that game.
I got a bonk for that. I suppose I deserved it. They missed several injuries on the offensive line. One turned out to be just cramping, which was Jesus. You'd been on your third string center like that before you playing.
I got a hot take for you. They'd be better off because then they'd be forced to go get a guy.
That's fair. That's a good point. I don't hate that.
But no, the likelihood that there is some regression for Brady this year, even if it's not big enough for you to really change your opinion of him, is high, in my opinion. And I can give you a quantitative reason and a qualitative reason for that. Which one do you want?
I want both.
Which do you want first?
Start with quantitative.
The quantitative reason is that he's playing more difficult pass defenses this year. He's playing more difficult pass defenses this year, and he is now going to have to go through a season following a big adjustment that they made last year. Last year, his frequency of passing was way, way, way high. He was throwing more than anyone else in the NFL. And now, with a full off season for defensive coordinators to eat that tape, there will be a lot of defensive coordinators on his schedule that have specific adjustments to counter the passing offense that the Bucs ran last year. On top of the fact that he is missing Gronk as a target, Godwin is coming off of ACL and will be back whenever he's back. Julio Jones is a corpse. Mike Evans has hamstrings made of tissue paper, and the depth is a bunch of question mark guys. So yeah, for passing game, likely to quantitatively be less excellent this year. Qualitatively, this is a guy that retired from football. he walked away from the game. Like, are we sure his heart is in it?
I just think he hates his family. This is the opposite of Sean Payton, who has 2 families. Brady barely wants one.
Brady does have 2 families, by the way. He's got a kid with Bridget Moynihan. And,
I forgot about
kids
Moynihan.
with Giselle.
Yeah,
Jet's out there. He's probably coming up through the ranks.
I do wonder what drove all this. Although this has happened with some of these megalomaniacs, like the Brett Favres of the world before, where it's just they realize like, oh, this isn't what I wanted. Like before they even have to watch their team play without him, they're like, this is not what I wanted. I want to play. I need to play. Like, did you
see that comment from Tim Strickland?
What Tom versus family time.
That's very good. That's very good.
I don't think I've ever seen. I don't catch all the comments. I'm not sure I've ever seen Tim Strickland make a comment before.
Tim Strickland.
That was his. That was his first one.
Tom does not want family time. No.
But no, funny.
Like qualitatively, like how much is his heart still in this? He's really ready to go grind a 17-game season right now. Like things start out rocky. If he's under pressure, if he's under duress because the interior of his offensive line doesn't have Ali Marpet, doesn't have Ryan Jensen available, like, yeah, I can see him having a tough time being as committed mentally to the 2022 campaign as he was last year. Certainly more so than he was in 2020 when he had a very significant "F you, Bill Belichick" message he wanted to send, right?
Dan is just cranking out those quote things that he makes for us. He's cranking out ones. He's talking about Tom Brady's skin. I need to turn my phone off now too. I specifically mute Slack for this reason. He's hit me on the Twitter DMs now. He's got my number, but Tom Brady. Yeah, somebody brings up he didn't look just torn up when he lost in the postseason. He had the weird retirement. He bounced back. I don't know. I'm not sure where his heart's at. I don't think you're going to get a Tom Brady who doesn't care playing, though. If he feels like he doesn't care, I don't think he'll play. I don't think he would play if he didn't. I think you get 100% Tom Brady all the time. Okay. It'll just be interesting to see there has to be, you can joke like he was undefeated against Father Time. Like there's a number, like, I don't know if it's 50 or what, but like eventually it's like, he's just too old. Like, it's like when you finally beat your dad at basketball. It's like, all right, now you're old man.
Yeah. But is he putting, here's the key question though. He'll give you everything on game day. I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
I want to know, is he putting in the time behind the scenes to develop up his starting wide receiver core potentially for week 2 in Tyler Johnson, Rashad Perryman, and Scotty Miller, right? Like, is he working with the guys who he's going to have to ultimately get it done with, which is going to feel an awful lot like 2019 New England Patriots, frankly. If there's no Godwin, did Russell Gage get hurt today, or was that no big deal?
It looks like maybe a hammy.
Oh, Christ. So both Evans and Gage have hammies, and Godwin is coming off of multiple ligaments. Okay.
Ligaments.
So yeah, best of luck to Tom Brady. And I really like,
and that's the thing, like, as much as I hate the Patriots and everything about that organization, again, I respected their cheating. I love cheating. I don't like I hate seeing, again, I just keep going to like the old day, but yeah, it's like seeing something that you used to love or something great just not good anymore. I'm trying to think of the analogy I used to use for this, but like, I don't want to see Tom Brady go out in a whimper. He doesn't have to win the Super Bowl and retire.
The end of the Kobe Bryant era was rough go. This doesn't have
or like somebody brought up MJ on the Wizards. Like nobody wanted to see that.
Yeah.
Like Randy Moss playing for like the Titans, like shit like that is that no one wants that.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. If he that's what he's going to get, I hope he just quits. But yeah, the biggest question mark outside of all the injuries is like, yeah, is he going to be putting in the work to make this offense really hum like he has for many, many years. And that brings us to where is the floor? Like, what if the offensive line takes a big step back and the receivers like Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson are good? Like, we've seen it. They're not bad wide receivers. They just might not be peak Antonio Brown. And I mean, even Gronk contributing what he did, and healthy Godwin, like, they aren't there. They could be. Tyler Johnson was a madman up at the U. I watched a bunch of him playing for the Gophers, but I don't know where his ceiling is. Like, if those guys don't have very high ceilings and the offensive line plays a little down and offenses are starting to figure out this defense and the games are, they're not, Brady's not able to just coast through some of these easy games. He has to be in comeback mode a little more. Like, I don't know, how low is the floor for this team, because they're favored in damn near every game. But again, like I mentioned, all these games against good quarterbacks, Dallas, New Orleans, Green Bay, Kansas City, the Rams, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Arizona, all those games are within a field goal.
Sure.
And then Baltimore 3.5. Like, they have a lot of games where if this team is 10% worse than where the market ranks them, all of a sudden they have 8 coin flip games. And if they're 20% worse than where the market ranks them, it's like, this team isn't hitting 5 for 500 all of a sudden from essentially an NFC favorite. There's a quick floor based on the schedule. They have a bunch of walkovers. Like, you are going to get to play Seattle at home. You get to play Atlanta. I mean, that's a double-digit spread right there, although they proved even a bad New Orleans team sometimes they have trouble with. So it's the floor is a hard swing if things don't go to plan this year.
Yeah, and I think I need to maybe recalibrate or reframe the team solving the defense. There are a couple of teams that have the completeness in place and the quarterback who is capable of doing what Stafford did in terms of delivering under pressure and carving up this defense. But they're rare. Like, that's like an elite offense is capable of doing that, right? And so I don't know that really I'm worried about the defense being out of the top 10. Like, the personnel on this defense is elite. And a healthy secondary this year solves a lot of those problems. And I think fundamentally, the market is expecting this to be closer to league average defense, which I completely disagree with. And they're expecting this offense to be elite, which I have huge questions about. And so I think we're looking at like a flip-flop in terms of exactly how the Bucs win games if and when they do win them. Right? They're going to struggle in my mind.
I don't hate that.
I think they're going to struggle to defeat good teams with good offenses, good quarterbacks. And I think that they are going to shut out teams with questionable quarterbacks. Like Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Carolina, that stretch right there, I'm thinking like combined 9 points, right? Like, this defense is going to wreck those guys, wreck them. If your offensive line has question marks, if your quarterback is a little squirrely when he's under pressure, forget about it. You're screwed. You're cooked. You have no shot, right? And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those games on their schedule. So 7 is their floor if they lose every other coin flip to an elite offense. And realistically, they'll win 3 or 4 of those. So they're probably a 10-win team as the floor. Unless Brady walks away from them, in which case the floor is a lot lower.
Floor's lava.
Any chance in your mind that Brady doesn't end up playing this season? He retires?
Yeah, no, I put it at 15, 20%.
I agree
Like,
with that.
He sowed a lot of doubt in my mind that, and again, he's kind of a dick. Like, he would retire in the preseason. Like, if his heart's not in it, he's like, I've played in the league for a long time. I don't know anybody's shit. I don't think because in his retirement speech where he didn't even like thank the Patriots or whatever, he's kind of a dickhead.
Oh yeah,
I think he would for sure just be like, I'm sitting here in week 3 of the preseason and I'm thinking, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And he would just leave this team in a fucking lurch. I don't think that's beyond him. Again, I'm not saying I am saying he's a bad person. He probably is a little bit of a bad person. I think some of the greatest athletes
Great
ever
skin,
to play
though.
this. Yeah, oh my God. Like velvet, I'm guessing. But I think some of the greatest athletes ever have been kind of shitty people. I think that's just part of the makeup you need because you have to be such a competitor. You can't give a shit about anybody who's trying to oppose you. Like Michael Jordan's a bad person. That guy's kind of a fucker. And still one of the best players of all time. LeBron for sure is a bad person. Look at his takes on China. But it's like Tom Brady.
This podcast is gonna get surprisingly scrubbed. We're accusing Tom Brady of HGH and poking the bear, the poo bear.
Tom Brady for sure would leave this team in a lurch. I don't see that not being a possibility. So then the ceiling gets a little lower and the floor drops to like 6 wins.
Okay, so here's the thing about the defense, because
O.J. Simpson, great running back.
The personnel in this defense has not been covered much in the preseason at all, because all of the focus has been injuries to the offense and, Tom Brady coming back, blah, 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 blah. The defense is this is the best group of players of any defense in the NFL by my measurement.
It is very, very, very solid.
Very, 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 very good. Now, whether they
hit
play
on again another Minnesota gopher, you hit on a nice young safety. If you can get defensive play, like that's how New Orleans did this. It's easy to go. It's the lazy man's way to go get a really good defensive end and trade a lot of draft capital and get. Hey, guess what? We got Khalil Mack. We traded a bunch for him, but like New Orleans became a good defense because a bunch of the pieces they were able to just get out of the draft and get it cheap. And that's what happens. That is, parts of this defense, you were just able to get on the cheap like that. But yeah, even Murphy Bunting kind of took some steps forward at times. Vita Vea is an elite guy up the middle. Devin White, Akeem Hicks, Jamal Dean, Antoine Winfield Jr. And they have depth. The depth of just when you know a bunch of the names that are in the depth part of it, like that speaks to like what you can do. Yeah. From a rotational standpoint, or you're even, depth at the secondary means your dime defense is elite. Yeah. Depth at the pass rush or linebacker means you can rotate guys through. You can have fresh guys on third down. Like this defense is legit. Both of these defenses today need a bunch of injuries to not be top 10.
I agree with that. You lose Ndamukong Suh. Let's just go get Akeem Hicks.
Yeah,
like that might be an upgrade. Probably an upgrade. Like that's crazy. Vita Vea, bona fide star, up and coming. I think he was my most valuable. Yeah, he was. He was the most valuable defender for them last year by my numbers.
You're playing 11 on 10 when he's taking blocks. He's a massive human.
Yep, Levante David and Devin White are like super complimentary. And actually, like, there's two kind of philosophical ideas about defense in today's NFL that I believe in. One of them is that it's a weak link system, right? Like if you have an exposed link, that's where teams will pick on you, and it ultimately lowers your floor as far as how good the defense can be, right? And the other is that you have a network effect, or kind of a compounding positive by putting really good guys next to really good guys, right? Like when I think of Akeem Hicks and his greatest asset for the Chicago Bears over the years, it was literally keeping two hats off Khalil Mack. Like the minute that Hicks wasn't there and you didn't have to account for him with, multiple or at least 1.5 assignments, then Khalil Mack wasn't as effective because you could put two hats on him, right? And so it's a complete defense, which makes them so scary, particularly from a pass.
Read this last comment from Johnny C.
Yeah, the team doesn't need.
This guy should be coaching the defense.
Right. Which is ultimately the classical criticism of Todd Bowles.
Yeah,
Like,
we
you
didn't
should
even
have
read it
had
out loud if you're listening on the podcast.
this team
Johnny
does
C
not
said-
need to blitz as much as they do. And realistically, if Todd Bowles brings that mentality into a game against the Rams and against a quarterback like Stafford who thrives against the blitz, then you have a very different outcome, Andy.
You do.
Don't put Sean Murphy bunting one-on-one against Cooper Kupp. Don't do it. You don't have to. You really don't. And it's weird that I kind of would put Todd Bowles and Les Frazier in a similar kind of category of brilliant defensive minds, but complete inability to adjust in game to what's happening. But that's
like
the way
we
I
said,
feel about these
it's an
guys.
elite defense, but if there is a weakness, it's probably your one-on-one cover corners. And Todd Bowles' game plan is to test them by bringing extra guys and making them cover one-on-one, making them cover in space, making them play more man. And that's not what you should be doing. You can get pressure without bringing that many guys. So that'll be interesting. And I think maybe whenever we dog on somebody like this for a tendency, I think maybe that's a good thing to watch for, because, man, I'd say 8 out of 10 coaches, they just never change. But there are, maybe that's high, 7. There are people who make adjustments. Those are the guys that are long for this league, that coach for many, many years and coach to success. Like, if you suddenly see a change in that sort of tendency where they're not blitzing as much, they're getting help, they're using, an extra defensive back, and it's not for bringing a blitz. If they're using an extra linebacker to help with some coverage and some zone schemes, like that's a sign that this defense is probably going to play better than it did over the past 2 years. And that's a buy signal for this team. Again, if Tom Brady retires in week 3, maybe that fucking doesn't matter. But that's whenever we shit on a team or a coach for a bad tendency like that, and you start to see it go away, it's probably a buy signal, because they finally realize they're fucking up.
I agree with that strongly.
Not that I'm saying, put your probability on that actually happening, though. It's still low. It's not 0. It's like 25%.
It's
and it's never wholesale. It's never like, stop blitzing altogether.
You know what? Here's my take on this, Andy. It's really, really rare in season for someone to pivot. The Bucs did it offensively 2 years ago, but it was because Brady made them, right? The Bucs, but where you do see a kind of a reinvention philosophically a lot of times is over an offseason.
When you have a whole offseason to do it.
You have an whole offseason to do it.
So that's a good point. If you see it, it'll be right away usually.
Yeah, if the Tampa Bay defense, because the Tampa Bay defense played Dak Prescott poorly, I thought, last year in the opener. They made that game harder on themselves than they had to, the way that they played him. And if it looks different this year, then I'll start to change my tune, I guess. Although Dallas's offense looks very different. So
body. So all right, let's look at this schedule.
Let's look at this schedule.
They were not underdogs. Again, they're another team. All the teams have Cleveland on the board. This is at Cleveland in damn near December for a warm weather team. So,
Andy, we got to start at the top.
Yeah, no, that's a
Sunday Night Football.
It's not an easy start to the season. 2 straight road games against 2 good offenses.
I made my first full-size bet of this regular season this week on that.
Do tell.
Under 53 points. Absolutely absurd number. This Tampa Bay defense, the quality that they are bringing into that matchup against the Dallas offense that has taken a step backwards, combined with Tampa Bay and all of their injured pieces and their O-line, figuring it out on the fly against the pass rush that Dallas brings to the table. That is a absolutely absurd total on Sunday Night Football. Are you with me?
Yeah, I was going to say one of our first things we said when we switched over to football was like fewer totals this year. Definitely fewer totals early in the week. But I just wanted to give
A
you
month
shit
out.
about I know a month out. I wanted to give you shit. No, it should probably be like 49 and a half, 50.
I made it
Like
47.
I'm starting to get a grip on my total numbers at this point. And yeah, it's Dallas it's a couple of teams that have some heavy uncertainty at what they'll get out of the wide receiver core, and it's one defense that should be just as good, and it's another defense that probably regresses but still has some good pieces against a beat up offensive line. So yeah, I mean you're right, it's high. I don't disagree with that.
How does that get relined when it's Blaine Gabbert against Dak Prescott there?
48?
No, come on. No, 44. Easy. For sure, 44.
They still have playoff Lenny.
That's okay. Okay, all right.
We haven't even mentioned that poor bastard, that plump motherfucker.
Yeah, no, I 53 was I had to fire just because once people start to digest really what's going on with both of these offenses as we see preseason games, I think that closes in the 49 range. I really do. Maybe I'm dreaming.
No, do not disagree.
All
right, tough start to the season.
I gotta offer one more clarifying point. I didn't realize that is a stale number. Did you see?
Where'd you bet it at?
Bookmaker. I got 53 flat. It is down to 51, 50 and a half some places.
I often wonder about this when you get in when you're still in preseason mode like this, if they're not having, because limits are still.
I think I said that on Gil's show in passing.
They're like limits are lower, but they're still not like $200 limits. You can bet real money.
I got a good size bet on that.
That's strange. And it's down to 51 just to the under bookmaker, but I agree to that. But back to the task at hand, what do you think overall of the schedule?
I think you said it well when we were talking about it earlier. It is a fucking roller coaster. There are high highs and there are low lows. There are no middles. This is
shit. Did I tell you about that last weekend?
No.
So the water park I went to, they also have an amusement park that's like, I don't know, a quarter mile, half a mile away. But when you drive to the water park, you have to go around on this road that goes past the amusement park. So I told the kids I'm taking them to a surprise. And there's this giant amusement park. And they're like, oh, we're going on roller coasters. And we drive right the fuck back. They were heartbroken for like 30 seconds. And then they see this bomb-ass water park. But my God, their little faces kill me. Oh, no, Dad, the roller coaster.
No, we're going to the duck pond outside.
We're gonna go feed some ducks. But no, that killed me. And yes, roller coaster, good example. But
I love it.
Yeah,
all right.
Of tough tests and easy
this
games.
I guess the right word is imbalance. The schedule presents imbalance. The first 4 weeks of the season are the most difficult 4 weeks of any team, and the margin is large. They have no breathing room. And actually, I'm working on a cool graphic that I'm going to send out to get people fired up. That's a little different. That kind of highlights strength of schedule over the balance of the season. Usually, people are like using rank or whatever, or win totals to get there. Like, we have power numbers for all these teams that the market told us. Like, here's the power numbers. That way, like you can see a little bit better how hard this start is, because it is brutally tough. These are for bona fide expectation is playoff teams, and Dallas. The two easier ones, you have to go on the road back to back. Week 1 and week 2 on the road back to back is hard anyway, and it just happens to be two teams that want your ass.
You got to go to Gero World and play a decent team, and then you go play the team you can't beat.
Yeah, 0-4 start entirely on the table, in my opinion. And then
Those are all
3-0.
teams whose their ceiling is making it
Yeah.
to the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's right. And then 0-4 start entirely on the table, 3-0 bounce, entirely expected, frankly. Whatever their record is.
Deserved and
Deserved. Yeah.
recommended.
Better bounce. Yeah, better
Yeah.
bounce there. I don't think you have to run and lay the points with them on the road against Pittsburgh and Carolina. You can just bet their team total unders because Pittsburgh's scoring 3 and Carolina might get shut out, or vice versa. But yeah, they got a weird start to their season that's flip flop. And yeah, you mentioned it. Baltimore and the Rams back to back at home are two tough matchups. Then they got to go play Seattle in Germany. They make that trip over to Munich.
Alemania.
And even though they take their bye after the trip to Germany, that's a long ass flight, and that has a shadow, and they have a travel disadvantage at Cleveland after their bye, and then a bunch of travel disadvantages down the stretch. Brutal spot for them at San Francisco. Brutal spot for them at Arizona. Lot of moving that old Tom Brady body around the country late in the season. He's gonna be feeling great.
Not only that, but getting all your medicine through customs and whatnot.
That's a great point. What if he goes to Germany and has a procedure though that they don't do in the
That's
United
fair.
States?
He could go full Peyton Manning, like, oh, I'm just in Europe.
I'm in Germany. You know what? I got to buy next week. I'm not going to fly back with the team. I'm going to go ahead and take care of some business here. But yeah, I mean, if Brady comes back off the bye and he looks like a younger man, then we know. I mean, at a minimum, he'll probably get his hair plugs redone, right? So
I would.
Yeah, he may look younger. Yeah. Not, the rest advantage against Cleveland is good, I guess. Rest advantage against the Rams is good, surely, but they have your number, which we talked about. A lot of prime time. We're going to see a ton of Brady this year. He's got 2 Sunday night football games in the first 4 weeks, including probably one of the more anticipated in the rematch with Pat Mahomes, week 4. Just a banger of a week 4 Sunday night football game. Tampa hosting the Chiefs. Thursday night football against Baltimore. Oh, buddy, we got a good one there. Thursday night football is going to kick ass that night. Tampa and Baltimore is a matchup that I just don't have a real. I can't remember a single time those two teams have played each other. But Brady versus Lamar Jackson should be fun as shit. Yeah, Monday night football against New Orleans. Sunday night football on Christmas Day against the Arizona Cardinals. All right. That was a weird pick.
Yeah.
Don't
I'm gonna watch basketball.
Don't know if I get that, but okay. Tom Brady presumably fighting for his playoff life against the fading Cardinals team at Cliff Kingsbury, who just got extended this year. Yeah, tough schedule, frankly. A lot of good quarterbacks on there, and but 7 wins, as far as I can tell you.
Yeah,
7 gimmies.
Floor's pretty high outside of
7
a
gimmies.
Surprise retirement, which we're not taking off the table.
20% that you said is higher than I would have thought you said. Usually, you're a little more conservative on those types of projections.
I don't know.
20 is fair though.
The off-season stuff really. I don't want to use the word freaked me. It didn't freak me out. Nothing freaked, but it didn't sit right. That's for sure. So I don't know.
No. Especially, you know what else? We didn't even bring this up. He's got $300 million. He's got more money to not play.
Yeah.
When he goes to Fox, he will make more money than he is making playing for the Buccaneers. So what are we waiting for?
I would do that.
I would do that too. Yeah. So. We'll see.
Not many people have torn an ACL from the studio. I was worried about those TBS guys when they do the run towards the screen, though.
They're big, but there's some big bodies. Yeah,
they're big dudes, too. So,
boys.
all right, let's take a look at the odds.
Let's look at the odds
before we close the book on this conference division. Win the Super Bowl NFC are really getting a ton of respect still, which Some of it's probably deserved. To win the NFC South, that number's hilarious.
P
Considering,
fucking you. P fucking you.
you know what I would like, and really, I was about to say I'd love a no on that, but really, you're just betting New Orleans. Like,
Yeah.
the chances of Carolina or Atlanta really, 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 really overperforming and Tampa underperforming, that's so low that essentially, if you want to fade Tampa, you're essentially just betting the Saints to win the division. To make the playoffs, no, it's still tough. Like, even if they super underperform, they win like 9 games, and it's the NFC where that could end up being, a team that ends up in the wild card. So
yeah, what would be incredible?
It's a good team more often than not.
It would be interesting. What kind of line do you give me if the Eagles win the NFC East, get the 2 seed, and Tampa sneaks in as the 7 and goes to Philly for the wild card game? What is that line?
All right, so it's in Philly.
In Philly, the 2-7 matchup.
And at that point, Philly has won like 13 games.
They're the 2 seed. They're looking good. They've won like 12, 13 games.
Philly -1.
How about that? I think you're right. I could see Tampa even being favored, frankly.
Yeah, it'd be really close. Like,
it'd be really close. Pick them. Yeah, I mean, my gut
just
says
the market perception.
It's going to be tough.
The market perception of Philly would be so much different at that point,
Oh, I know, but they will have played no tough quarterbacks all season to that point. Yeah, that Philly defense is going to be so ripe to get exposed, and God knows what Hurts looks like in a second going up against that same defense. The Todd Bowles defense
that's the other
ideal
part of it
defense
too. Like,
for a young QB
Hurts,
like Hurts. Yeah,
I think I said the market is respecting Philly at that point. Really, really, what it comes down to is like, does Hurts look like a guy who rode a good team to the playoffs despite not playing all that well for a young quarterback, or does he look like the way that we described Joe Burrow last year? And all the superlatives we used around Joe Burrow, and it wasn't just his play and what he was doing. It was, he looked like he belonged. He looked like he had this poise, this leadership abilities. Like,
unflappable.
Unflappable. Just the poise that he showed looked like he'd been in the league for 10 years. I don't think there's any way Jalen Hurts gets to that. I'm not sure the next time we'll see a young quarterback get to that so fast. But if Jalen Hurts can get a portion of that, and he looks like he's not on a 13-win team despite him, but because of him, then Philly's probably getting a decent amount of respect and is a tiny favorite. Otherwise, there's a chance if the market is cold on Jalen Hurts, even though they won the division, Tampa might be a road favorite there. So, betting plan of attack for this team as we close it up for the night.
God, I'm going to bet every single one of their games. Don't you think that this is like one of the more true reads you have on a team?
You'll figure things out about this team quickly.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, and there'll be reasons to expect the market to over and under react every fucking week. It's going to be something. There's going to be an angle every week to bet these guys. I hope Brady stays with us. I hope he plays this season.
You made it sound like you hope he doesn't die.
Well, I hope that also. I love Tom Brady.
Grandpa Brady stays with us for another winter.
I hope. Yeah, I hope Grandpa Brady makes it. No COVID. Knock on wood. It's a.
The only nice thing about the NFL, no Canadian team, so don't have to deal with figuring that out. Although I wonder about
everyone on the Bucs last year was vaccinated. I'm winking if you can't see it live.
You can't hear the wink on the podcast. Drew's winking though. I can confirm.
Antonio Brown was the only one with a fake vaccination card.
Oh, God, I forgot about that whole thing. So, all right, let's call her a day.
That might have been our best and most controversial podcast of the entire cycle.
Yeah, you called Tom Brady a bad person.
I thought you did. Oh, you said something
I don't.
very positive about his
I don't
skin.
remember it that way.
Yeah.
I don't hate.
I'll never
Canadians.
have Tom Brady's skin because I am in the sun too much, and I eat too many tomatoes and drink too much alcohol. I think those are the two.
I wear a lot of
things
sunscreen.
screw
You can tell I'm very pale.
Yeah, even at the water
take
park
care of this.
where you torture your kids.
I just coated myself. So, all right, hey, if you are, I get a lot of DMs. I should have done this at the very end of the show. I never ask for anything, but if you're gonna bug me for a fucking Discord link, I'm gonna make you like take a screenshot that you did something nice. Like go leave a 5-star Apple review for the podcast. Or
that would have been a great way to leverage that.
I know I should have leveraged it sooner, but like if you're gonna bug me for a Discord link in my DMs, take time out of my day where I have to go pull a link and send it to you. Those 30 seconds. Go leave me a 5-star review or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Send me a screenshot of that, and I will happily go get you the Discord link. There's a lot of smart discussions going on there. I don't participate as much, but I read almost everything in there. There's a bunch of sharp cookies in there. It's a really good group of guys. So
yeah, and of course, sign up for the Circa contest. We're going out to the desert this week to do our signups. We're gonna have a great interview on Friday with a Circa employee to be named. I've got it all worked out, but I'm gonna leave it on let you guys be surprised. I think that and of course, if you're in the desert, hit us up. We're gonna be gallivanting around town, or at least up and down Fremont. So
there will be some gallivanting.
There'll be some gallivanting. I'm bringing my gallivanting shoes, Andy.
I'm just bringing flip-flops. So. All right. See you guys. Have a good night. What shoes do you gallivant to? Are they like boat shoes?
You joking,
I can't do the no socks.
You don't have gallivanting shoes?
I have boat shoes. I feel like that's what you're talking.
Yeah, that's how you gallivant, obviously.
I have Rockports. I really like them, but I do sheet.
Loafers with no socks that's gallivanting territory.
I know, but I wear those socks that you can't see. I have to.
Yeah, I got a nice pair of